Hi everyone, I'm Elisabeth, and it's really a great pleasure to have you tuning in and listening to my talk about microscopy science art for public engagement. If you don't follow me already, please give me a follow either here on YouTube or on Twitter as well as on Instagram. And if you want, the link to my website is down here below as well. But today I want to share with you a little bit about the journey, the success, as well as kind of the work and the grind that goes into our science art. For those of you who don't know me, I am a biomedical image analyst. That means I get data from microscopes that look like this, and we transform them then from images into knowledge. So for example, in this case, we would be interested to know how many cells are in this specific tissue. And so I get wonderful data to work with, and particularly during my PhD, I had the pleasure to work with so-called light sheet data, which is a special form of a microscope that allows you to get quite a large field of view, so a lot of information from the data that you're working with. And the things that I was working on is actually how does the brain vasculature develop, and we were looking at zebrafish brains to do this. And what you see here is actually the brain vessels from a 3-day-old zebrafish, and they're just in 3D rendered, and they're just rotating to give you a little bit of an information. If you look at this brain region here, this is about 0.5 millimeter at size at this 3-day-old zebrafish larvae, and the individual blood vessels are about 10 micrometer in diameter, and 10 micrometer is about the thickness of a single spider silk strand. So this is really, really tiny. But as you can see, these data are really beautiful to work with. And so these are just different views and different vessels that we're looking at. But basically, we started to have some success with our science art, particularly when sharing it on Twitter. And we were on various different covers, as well as were awarded different awards as well as shortlists. But then when I moved on from my PhD to my postdoc, I was joined up with the fantastic Ryan MacDonald from the University College of London, who also loves science art. And you see here one of his science art images where you look at various different cells being stained within the eye. And so what we do in his lab is trying to understand how does the eye form and how do different cells contribute to the fact that we can see the outside world, and how is this translated to the brain. And so the eye is really beautiful tissue to study, not only because it is very round, as you can see here, but also because the cells within this tissue are very nicely layered. So it's almost like cake with different layers, and so it's very stereotypic, and we can really follow different processes, as you can see here, for example, very, very nicely, where we see that there is a very specific layer of synapse terminals of neurons that interact with other cells within the eye. And so again, we've won various different awards and we've been shortlisted, but again, this is just obviously kind of the output that you see, but there goes a lot of work into it in the background. And so we have not only engaged into kind of visual science art, as you can see here on the screenshot from my website gallery, but also we've started to branch out into, for example, giving interviews, writing opinion pieces, for example, doing this video. We've also worked very heavily on our websites, but especially also social media. And I think particularly during the pandemic, for us moving from in-person to virtual was a very great change. And I love Twitter. Again, follow me if you don't. And for Twitter, there are various different kind of things, such as Fluorescence Friday or the ScienceArt hashtag that you can follow to find fantastic scientists who share their science and their art. You can also look at the hashtag microscopy Twitter to find various different researchers. And so one example of the things that I did was actually to have a science art advent calendar in 2021. And so in the run up to Christmas, I just shared an image every day, having a little bit of an explanation. And I think the nice example here is that this has about 500 likes, but actually it reached over 63,000 impressions. And this is just one nice example of this image could have just sat on a computer and never been seen by anybody, but like this, we had the chance to really share our science and our art with people who probably would have never seen it otherwise. Also, one thing that we kind of dabble into is YouTube, so that's why we're here today, and obviously also different science art collaborations. So we're starting to talk different artists and galleries. One thing that I'm kind of trying to dabble into as well is videos and video editing. So I'll show you a very kind of sneak peek of a short video. But obviously, it's also important to know how to measure science impact. And so we have various different kind of things that we work on, like I said, but also various different readouts. And you can have a look at all of them in a little bit more detail, but I think the kind of takeaway from this here is that there's many different things how you can kind of assess success. But for me, the most important thing here is actually also knowing when to walk away from something that doesn't work. One example here is that I started to do a blog, I think it was in 2019 or 2020, I can't remember, but it actually didn't really take off and it didn't really work in a way that I wanted to do. And so I felt it was more work than anything. And so I've stopped doing that. And I think that's just the right thing to do. And that doesn't mean that I will never be a successful blogger on my own website, but it just means at the moment I can't do that. And so that's kind of why I really moved away from that. But also I want to be honest and say, you know, all of this sounds great, but I think it is also important to think that this is additional work that you do, and you have to take time out and you have to go through various iterations, and obviously also a lot of setbacks. So it's not, you know, all just nice and shiny, but also it goes a lot of kind of work into this. And so from my personal journey, I thought I'd just very briefly share that for me, science and art have always been intertwined, and I've always loved both science and art equally. And so throughout my whole life, I've really worked across various different media, so from watercolor to acrylics to aquarelle and just ball pens, and really tried various different styles in art. But also I've started photography quite recently. And what you see with all of this is that I've got quite a weird kind of palette, but also I love different compositions and experimentation. And I think this is important because it shows you different angles of how you see the world, which is exactly what we do with microscopy. And the same kind of thought process comes into how we approach reduction experimentation in art, because in art it is a very common thing to go through many different iterations. And this is just exemplified here where we look at the Picasso ball, where he tried to go from this original ball painting to just finding the essence of the ball. And so he had 11 different iterations to doing so. And with the kind of same spirit, we know that various different designers go from something more chunky to something very nice and very slick. And this is just shown here in Apple, where the design principle is simplicity. Whereas for me, it's the other way around. I don't want something that is simple, such as this kind of image shown here in green, but actually something that is really intriguing and that keeps the viewer for longer. And so what I do is actually take the image and work it through various different iterations until I derive at something that I find interesting and that can hold my interest for more than just a few seconds. And so I take the kind of other way around to Apple, let's say it like that. But obviously all of this is not just kind of buzzwords. All of them are set in different fields of knowledge, and for me the probably three main fields where I derive all of this knowledge from is firstly art. So again, art has always been really important to me, but I think especially in the last few years I've taken it more seriously and started to really think about more conscious decisions in art composition and palette, but also, you know, the actual message that I want to convey with my art. The second area that probably influences me the most is actually marketing and branding. So we're talking about how do you want to present yourself, and what are the important things for you, and how can you be true to your own brand and values. And lastly, one thing that I've always been passionate about is teaching and storytelling and sharing knowledge. And here it is also very important to know that obviously we work with really complex data, but I love to share really just a little bit about what we do in terms of science and why it is important, and share that with everyone who kind of wants to hear about it. And again, so learning theory is obviously a huge thing for this as well. And so just in summary, I think the important thing is to be bold and try new things, such as this YouTube video here. Share if you like it, give me comments, yes, no, maybe. I would love to hear what you think about it. I think it's also really important to be multidimensional and get your inspiration from more than just one thing. There are many of us who love to be in the lab 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but for me, that's just not the right thing. For me, I need the influence from art, science, photography to let this inspire all of my areas of life. And I think similarly, kind of in the last point, to measure impact, I think it's less about kind of the, you know, everything's shiny and everything's perfect marketing, branding, and learning theory, but actually to step away and say, what is a time eater, and how can you be very efficient about your time, and what is it that you actually do enjoy. And so with this, I hope you enjoyed this video about the journey, success and the grind of my science art journey. And with that, I want to thank you. And again, this was my first kind of YouTube video that we've recorded, and so with that, I would love to hear any comments. And again, please give us a follow. So thank you very much. Again, I'm Elisabeth Kugler, and it was a pleasure talking to you today.